Okay, in chapter 6.5, we're discussing more complex shapes and their volumes. And the way I want you to determine these sorts of volumes is I want you just to go to your internet, to a browser, and type in the type of volume it is, and then find the equation for it. For example, right circular cone. If you were to go to Google and you type in right circular cone, something like this just pops up, and it gives you a equation for the volume. So you have to look down at this little schematic and you have to see that the height, so the volume of a right circular cone, which looks something like this, it has a circular bottom and is kind of like pyramid shaped, is 1/3 the height times pi r squared. And so I just want you to do that for when you work on your quiz or your preliminary practice exam. That's what I want you to do. Just go to the internet, find these volumes, and then write down the answers. So that's section 6.5. Let's move on to chapter section 6.6. Here we're going to talk about conversions. And essentially what a conversion is just another way of writing a particular type of unit. So for example, suppose we have 1 meter, something that is 1 meter long. Well, 1 meter is the same as 1.09 yards, and that's the same as 3.28 feet. So if I had 2.5 meters and I want to figure out how many feet I have, we could make that conversion. And here's the way I suggest you do this. What I do is I will set up like a table, because this really represents a fraction. It's 2.5 meters over 1 essentially. So I'm gonna break this up into kind of like a table, but these are like fractions. So if I want to do this conversion, if I want to convert to feet, and these are the numbers that I'm using, this is the information I have, then I can do this from this point. So what I need to do is I need to get rid of meters. So I want the meters in the denominator. So what I'll do is I'll say 1 meter is 1.09 yards. So now, since this is a fraction, we'll end up canceling out these m's, and I'll be left with yards. So 2.5 yards is the same thing as 2.5 times 1.09 yards. Make sense? Okay, but I want to continue on and do this in one calculation. So now I want this in feet. I know there's 3.28 feet in, well, I know that there's 3 feet in a yard. So 1 yard, because I'm going to try to get rid of yards, equals 3 feet, or 3 feet. So if I go and I run through this calculation on my calculator, here's my calculator, just ran through the calculations. 2.5 times 1.09 times 3 equals 8.175. And here you see that the yards cancel out, and I'm left with just feet. So my final unit is feet, 8.175 feet. So 2.5 meters is 8.175 feet. Now some of you are saying, well, why didn't you just take this number and multiply it directly by 2.5? Well, of course you could do that, but sometimes sometimes you'll get confused on whether you should multiply or divide by the different conversions that are written. And if you use this approach that I showed right here, you'll never get confused. It always makes perfect sense. So what I was saying is this really is the same thing as taking 2.5 meters and multiplying it by 3.28. And essentially what we're talking about here is feet per meter. So again, you got the fraction here. So the units work the same way that the actual numbers do. So these 2 meters go cancel out. There's one in the numerator over here. This is like meters over 1. This is feet over meters. One over here, this cancels out when we multiply it. So we're left with 2.5 times 3.28. So you see I did the calculations. I come out with 8.2, which is a little bigger than this. So this is really an approximation because this is rounded off. My result is a little more accurate, although this 1.09 is probably rounded too. But we know there's exactly 1 yard for every 3 feet. All right, I think we had a little dead air back there, but I wanted to draw a scale. And so when we're talking the metric system, one thing that's nice about the metric system is that things fit together really well. For example, if I have a cube here and I fill it with water, so that's going to be 1 liter of water, and 1 liter is the same thing as 1 cubic decimeter. So now we have the volume associated with, so we have something that's associated with volume, and we tie it into our lengths here. So this is a cube that's 1 decimeter by 1 decimeter by 1 decimeter. A cubic decimeter is a liter, and 1 liter weighs the same as 1 kilogram. So it's a unit of mass, but that's how the metric system works, and that's one of the advantages of a metric system. Now, the metrics, there's advantages, other advantages associated with the English system. One of which is that it's real similar to a base 12 system, and we can divide things up really easy. But let's stick here with this metric system for a second. Now notice I'm calling this a kilogram over here, and a kilogram is really the same thing as saying 1,000 grams. So kilo is 1,000. And in the metric system, we have a number of different prefixes that we can use to differentiate the size of a unit. So again, the kilo is times 1,000. I guess we could go with this. The hecto is times 100. The deca is times 10. Then we go smaller. The deci is times 0.1 or 1/10. The centi is times 0.01 or 1 over 100. And let's just stop with the milli. The milli is times 0.001, 1 over 1,000. So you could say something like, you could have a hectometer, which equals 100 meters. So that's how those things work. So suppose I want to do some conversions. Suppose I want to convert 9 millimeters to meters. What do we do? Well, let's use the system that I showed you before. So we're going to start out with 9 millimeters. So it's like, so this is like a fraction, 9 over 1. So I need to get rid of this millimeters, so I need to figure out a millimeter to meter conversion. Well, I know that there are 1,000 millimeters in 1 meter. So you might have to look that up to figure out what your conversion is, how many millimeters in a meter. Or if you have the metric system down in your head, you can quickly maybe memorize those sorts of things, so you don't have to look it up. It's a little easier to memorize the metric system than it is the English system. So 9 millimeters over 1,000. So this, then, the millimeters here cancel out, and we're left with meters. So this is the same thing as saying 9 divided by 1,000 equals. So here we go, 9 divided by 1,000 is 0.009. So 0.009, and this is what's left, so meters. So 9 millimeters equals 0.009 meters. Okay, let's try another one. 10 kilometers to meters. Well, this one's pretty simple. You can probably do this in your head. Let's use the same system I used. So 10 kilometers. So here, we've got to flip this around now. So you have, there's 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. So you just got to match this up so you can cancel properly. So it's 10 times 1,000. So this equals 10,000 meters. So 10 kilometers is 10,000 meters. So we can also go and figure out, say, how many cubic centimeters are there in 1.2 liters. Maybe if you're working in the hospital, you need to figure that out. cc's, cubic centimeters. Let's start out with, well, we know there's 1.2. We're going to start out with 1.2 liters. Well, I know from my picture up here, I can deduce that there are 0.1 or 1/10 so a deciliter is 0.1 meters. So there's 0.1 cubed meters per liter. And I know that, I'm going to have to end.